another appropriate source of well-being or another strategy to be able to take care of myself. So, for example, if I'm in a room and my partner is yelling at me and screaming at me about whatever, what do I want? Well, I probably want them to stop yelling at me. Ultimately, what do I want? I want to have some peace going on around me and in me. Now, when we don't have the flexibility to look at our options, what do we end up doing? We end up yelling back. We end up yelling louder.
Right.
And so, we could say to that person, make a request, please stop yelling.
Right.
And if they don't stop, odds are they might not.
Right.
That might seem like a bit of a big request to ask of someone in the heat of the moment. But then you follow it up with your boundary and you say, okay, if you're not able to help me out with that, I'm going to leave the room. Or I'm going to leave the house. I'll check in with you in an hour.
Right.
Finding creative ways to set our boundaries and finding creative alternatives, that's where the flexibility comes in, instead of thinking there's only one way through this. And frankly, and this is a whole other topic here, but frankly, what takes away that flexibility is the fight or flight response, believing that I either need to attack or run away in order to be okay here. The fight or flight response just collapses the space that Viktor Frankl talks about between stimulus and response. And then when that space collapses, we lose access to our prefrontal cortex. We lose access to our logical thinking. We lose access to the ability to process the situation based on our principles and our values. And so we lose our creativity in that moment. We lose the flexibility that we need to find a better alternative. And the rigidity and the lack of flexibility shows up in believing that there is only one way through this, and I have to exercise great control over the circumstances of the person in front of me to get through this the way I believe I need to get through this.
Well, I love that. Thank you. So this is Happily Ever After. It's just the beginning on webtalkradio.net. I'm Leslie Dories, and I'm talking with licensed professional counselor and relational resilience coach Brent Peak about emotional resilience. And if you find it difficult to cope with your marriage's less pleasurable moments, you're not alone. But holding on to negative thoughts or beliefs about you or your relationship can lead you to think your marriage is worse than it probably is. And not addressing these thoughts productively, with flexibility, as we were just talking about, can lead to more difficulties. And that's where I can help. I invite you to take a moment and schedule your free, no-obligation, 5-star relationship discovery call. You can reach me by phone at area code 919-924-0463. That's 919-924-0463. Or you can shoot me an email at Leslie, Lesli, at foundationscoachingnc.com. That's FOUNDATIONS, coaching, N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie.com. And now I want to get back to this conversation about emotional resilience and the second component, which is adaptability. So, Brent, what makes someone adaptable, and how is this helpful for emotional resilience?
So flexibility is about mindset. Adaptability is about skills. In our relationship with other people, and especially in our close romantic relationships, friendships, and family relationships, we tend to have a very limited set of default relationship skills. And in my experience with the folks I've worked with, those skills that they do have are based on how they had to deal with whatever degree of dysfunction there was in their family of origin.
Okay.
So a lot of the things that we end up doing in our adult relationship are skills that we came by honestly, to try to find our well-being in the relationship, find peace in the relationship, find happiness in the relationship. But generally speaking, most of the time with the folks that I've worked with, those skills are based on the dysfunction they grew up with, which is kind of a scary thing, because there is a dark side to some of the things that you think are a really good thing about you. You know, maybe you're the kind of person that you've got your act together, you don't need help, you're looking good from the outside, And that probably takes someone far in whatever their vocation is. But I've seen a lot of people that are doing great in their vocation because of some of those types of traits, but they're not doing so well in their personal relationships. Because at the end of the day, go ahead.
No, go ahead. At the end of the day.
Well, at the end of the day, those traits that help us feel safe and might even, score some points at work or move us up the ladder at work are the exact thing that's destroying the relationship that we really care about the most. I can be in control, not need any help at work. I got my act together. Look at me. I'm invulnerable. No one can touch me. You come home and act like that. That's not a very relational way to be. I've worked with a lot of folks that, they're like, my employees love me, right, but my wife doesn't seem to see what my coworkers and my employees see. And after reminding them who writes their employees' paychecks, of course they're going to like you, or at least look like they like you. At work, the goal is to make the money, please the investors, make the widgets. It's a very agenda-driven thing. You can't take that home. And so I tell these people, the things that have gotten you through a situation like that at work, they're not going to help you at home. And at home, we end up reverting to, as I was talking about earlier, the skills and strategies that we learned in dealing with the dysfunction, often with our parents or with other authority or figures or caregivers growing up. If we grew up in a setting where it was hard to be heard, where our voice didn't matter, we grow up and we decide, hey, I can be heard if I yell loud enough.
Wait, were you in my house growing up?
I've heard the story a few times. I've heard the story. Yeah. So it is, we all grew up in imperfect families. Now, I'm not here to say that, everything wrong with you is your parents' fault, so just sit back and blame them for the rest of your life. Right. That's not taking responsibility. That's not maturity. But we do need to connect dots.
Yes.
We do need to ask ourselves, okay, if I'm engaging in this dysfunctional behavior in my relationship, I'm losing control and I'm yelling all the time. Okay, who was the yeller in your household growing up?
Right.
Did you have to yell in your household growing up just to feel heard, just to get a basic need met? So adaptability is about connecting the dots with our current skills to our past lessons in life, whether that goes back to trauma, abuse, or just some sort of dysfunction that we grew up with. Connecting those dots, realizing the impact of that in our relationship now, and then finding new ways to be with someone else that is more about relationship and connecting rather than trying to control the situation in order to get my well-being from something outside of myself.
Right, and I did want to tack on something to that because it really does come from what we learned and the coping skills we developed as children, and that's also a piece that when we're children, first off, we don't have the whole the context of the situation because we're at 5 years old, you haven't lived very long and you don't have a whole lot of context, right? So you're figuring out what works, but you're figuring it out in a kind of in a one down position where I'm not really an equal, and I don't have a huge range of information that I can choose from. I mean, and just natural life anyway, because if you talk to a little kid and you ask them, what they want to do, with their life or whatever, they'll give you these completely, it's like, oh, well, I want to fly or I want to do this because they don't understand the reality of the world because they have unlimited imaginations. But then life just kind of narrows the things that they figure out work, and we never really broaden ourselves back out again. And so I'm hearing that that's where the skill about adaptability might be really handy.
Yeah, and I give credit to one of my mentors, Pia Melody, who wrote the book Facing Codependence. she points out that for most of us, what we consider to be adult behavior is really just a child's best attempt at being an adult.
Mm-hmm.
We worked on that as a kid. We worked on that as a teenager. And in our immature state, we tried really hard to do the best things that we could to navigate the difficult situations we were in. Mm-hmm. And so that skill set became, I was about to say cemented in our brain, but thankfully there's something called neuroplasticity. We can change these things. But, those became the default strategies. Mm-hmm. And until we do this work, until we gain some awareness, our best attempts at trying to get the relationship we really want is a child's best attempt at an adult relationship. Because, I don't know how many times I've asked someone, how old do you feel in a mm-hmm. situation like that? Mm-hmm. And without any hesitation, I hear some age under 18, mm-hmm. usually between 8 and 12 years old.
Yep.
And so you have to be able to go back and do that work of being able to meet those unmet needs of the child that you were, and being able to look at yourself with compassion. And that's a whole nother topic right there. But yeah.
Yeah, that's a topic for another show, which maybe I'll have you back on. But so you're talking about this, and I'm familiar with Pia Mellody by way of Terry Real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so this idea that we need to basically grow ourselves up in a different way. So if people want to be more mature, want to be more relational, want to be more flexible and adaptable, what are some steps somebody can take to get started on this journey?
Well, I think that I think any journey of personal development starts with three things. Number one, champion yourself with humility. We have to be able to have an appropriate self-esteem that values ourselves from within, that does that with humility. When we can do that, that is the beginning of being able to create a functional, mature base for us to operate from as we're interacting with other people. Championing yourself with humility, not overrunning other people and not letting other people overrun you, but having a balance of equality with other people, that you don't have to exert control to be okay. So number one, championing yourself with humility. Number two, own what you can control. And frankly, that's everything within your boundary of responsibility. And I would, a lot of people minimize what they feel like they have control over within themselves. They want to blame other people for how they feel. They want to blame other people for what they do. Mm-hmm. Most of the time people will agree with me. Oh yeah, I want to be responsible for my behavior. I try to be responsible for my behavior. And yet in the broader culture, it's quite common to hear the phrase, look what you made me do.
Exactly.
Own what you can control. You are responsible for your behaviors. And I would say you're responsible for your emotions as well. Mm-hmm. Get rid of the language that says, you make me so mad. You make me so whatever. Get rid of the words make me in your interactions with someone else. Stop blaming someone else for how you feel or what you do.
Right.
And at the same time, get rid of the language about getting someone to do something. That's number three, releasing what you can't control. Okay. So, someone will come to me and will say, how do I get my wife to stop nagging me? How do I get him to start, doing more around the house?
Right.
And I tell them, I'm not here to help you win friends and influence people. I'm here to help you take care of yourself and respectfully and humbly assert your needs, your desires in the relationship. And when someone else is unavailable to accommodate you, you find another healthy way to take care of yourself and be okay. So own what you can control